This is the latest edition of Pro Wrestling Then and Now. I am your host, Torch contributor Frank Peteani, and we are here to discuss the 1990 Royal Rumble. Yes, folks, we are jumping back 35 years into the past to talk about that show. It is Royal Rumble month, so around this time of the year, I like to look back at some of these old shows and compare them to what's taking place today because, hey, that's the purpose of this show. It's pro wrestling then and now. Of course, I can't do it alone. I have a very special co-host with me today. He is appearing for the first time on Pro Wrestling Then and Now. Really happy to have him. Really excited to talk to him today. He is my good friend and yours, a longtime Torch columnist, Sean Radican. Sean, it is a pleasure to be working with you today. Thank you for doing this, my friend.
Hey, how are you today?
Good, good, good. Hope you're doing well over there. I know it's been a little bit of a tough month for you, so I'm glad you're able to power through this. And do this show with me. It's been a while. We've been talking a lot offline, so it's nice to actually talk to you on the phone and whatnot. I'll give you a chance, Sean, later. We'll do like your social and everything you do for the Torch at the end of the show. That way, we do it one time. We'll do it on the way out. That way, it's everything is fresh in everybody's mind. But
Good.
before we get started, I just kind of want to get your overall thoughts on this show. You're a guy, you've covered Ring of Honor over the years, New Japan, things like that, AEW. You cover really good quality wrestling. And to go back and watch a WWF show from 1990 is a real left turn, so I just kind of want to get your overall thoughts on that, from a presentation standpoint, and some of the other things that you might have picked up on in the overall sense, rewatching the show.
Yeah, no surprises. The wrestling's not all that great, even though they have good wrestlers in the promotion. Like Duggan was a good territory wrestler. DiBiase was a good territory. Just a
Yeah.
couple of examples, but it's not that. I mean, it's not that. It's interesting because WWE had that had the fan base really went for easy, what I mean. You didn't have to do a ton to get the audience engaged in the matches and the stories, and
Yeah.
so at the same time they had an audience that was easy to please, an irate, or get the heel booed, and basic stuff. um I thought
Yeah.
the I thought the presentation, for the time was pretty good. You know what I mean? Was pretty
Yeah.
good. Just
You know,
they
it's
got
it's a promotion, Sean. Just to kind of color in your point. It's a promotion that at the time it was kind of hitting. It was pleasing its audience. As it's doing now here in 2025. It's pleasing its audience, and as we go throughout the show, and even some of the things that you were texting me about yesterday, some of the stuff that you're just like, really, like that gets a reaction, but it just works for the crowd. It works, just based on who the characters were and how they were presenting things.
yeah. I mean, it was heavily aimed at kids and stuff, and young adults, and testosterone gassed males, I guess.
Yeah.
um,
Gassed males in the 90s in WWF. Nah, really?
yeah, we'll get to the. I mean, I had some. There's one segment. I sent you the GIF, the loud noises GIF
Yes, 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 you did. Yeah, yeah,
from
yeah.
yeah, from yeah, from that famous movie scene. Now I can't remember the name of the movie because I'm like
Oh God, yeah. I'm drawing a blank. I got
the
to
Anchorman, right? Yeah,
Anchor.
the
Yes,
Anchorman.
yes, yes. That's exactly it.
So yeah, the there's a lot of yelling in promos. um, I thought some of the production was like the camera shots and stuff during the Rumble were really good during the match. I was like,
Yeah.
just watching it, I was like, so many of these guys are gone now, and it's like there they are brought to life. Andre the Giant, and the camera looking at him from ring. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's just me remembering all these guys, but
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like, oh my god, these guys were like larger than life back in that time. You know what I mean? In 1990, to me, I was what
Yeah.
10 years old when this turned 11 that year.
Okay.
So very much larger than life still, and that type of thing to me at that time, and it was cool seeing all those the guys like Andre and Mr. Perfect and Million Dollar Man and all those gimmick characters they had.
Yeah.
But of course, Dusty,
Yeah.
put paying his dues, back to Vince with the polka dot gimmick.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it was something, it was like it was made for kids, but at the same time, there's some stuff on this show, that is pretty bad too. Like the we'll get to it. The whole segment with Sapphire and
Oh Lord.
Queen Sherry. Oh my God, that
Yeah.
might get you canceled today with how blunt it was.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. No, you and I,
Um,
we were
we
chatting
were
about that
talking.
offline. Yeah.
I think one of the things I noticed, it seemed like that a lack of star power in the show overall, outside of Giant Roger the Giant was a big deal, but like outside of Hogan and Warrior, it didn't feel like there was too much there for them on the show
Right.
in particular. Um, it just when those two came, like those two got electric responses, but the rest of you know what I mean, just in
Yeah.
terms of just but yeah, a lot of the stuff just seemed to be like aimed at pleasing the just easy stories and stuff, you know what I mean, and things of that nature. There's also some, a lot of a couple of the finishes weren't so great, but
No, no. And that's, that's really a good thing to bring up because, we're pretty critical of that nowadays. We talk a lot about finishes, you'll talk about them on your roundtables and things like that. Um, but like back then, it just seemed to like it seemed to like not matter, because we were just happy, at you were 11 years old, me at 16, we were just happy to get these matches because you were still in the era of, squashes on Saturdays. And you had to wait until Saturday night's main event or pay-per-view to get the quote good matches, unless
yeah,
you
I
were,
mean, I hardly ever saw a good match growing up. I didn't get you know what I mean.
yeah.
I didn't have cable. I didn't get the pay. You know what I mean.
Mm,
Until I was a little bit older, I started to get. My dad would rent them for me, and from Blockbuster when they came. So it was like
yep.
months. And even then, it wasn't. I didn't really get like, just a lot of TV wrestling, the WCW stuff. The same thing. You didn't really get a ton of great in-ring action, so it's not like you had a high, you know what I mean, a high standard to follow if you weren't able to see it, everything.
Yeah, I mean, you were just happy, like you were just happy to get, like the Bushwhackers versus the Rougeos, because on
Yeah,
TV,
I
you
mean
get the Bush.
there
Yeah,
was no Nitro at that time.
no,
I think it was just WCW Saturday Night was all I could. I mean, I know they had but they have like did they have TV specials, or were they paid like Clash of Champions, or were
the
those cable
Clash.
specials?
I'm glad you said that. The Clash of the Champions started. I want to say it was 1988, but I could be off on that a little bit. Um, duh, 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 duh. 1988. And as a matter of fact, the first one I think went the same weekend as WrestleMania 4. because that was a whole thing. Because Vince,
Because of course they would go ahead to.
yeah, well, Vince whipped out his, he whipped out his dick at Survivor Series, and then the same thing at the Royal Rumble. W, or I guess Crockett at the time said, "All right, how about this?" And they ran the Clash, which was actually but it was the same night as WrestleMania. So
Yeah,
WrestleMania,
it was on cable, right? Yeah, so I wouldn't have.
yeah,
I would at my point. I don't think I was able to see that either, unless but I do remember. I think one of what was it? The Night of the Skywalkers, the scaffold match. Was it the Rock and Roll and Midnight Express, or
um,
Midnight Express versus Legion of Doom? I'm trying to remember. It's one where
uh,
Cornette. There's one where Cornette. I think that was 80. This is 86, I think, or 87.
okay,
I'm just going back to a show I actually saw that had stuff that you know what I mean. That was way above the standard of
yeah,
the typical WWE show at that
yeah,
time.
yeah, and that certainly wasn't aimed at kids. I'll tell you that. you
No,
know,
so like
um,
the scaffold match and things like that. And I would see like Flair and Dusty and on VHS tapes, and I mean that was the stuff. Like I was like, oh my god, this is so much better than
yeah,
than but of course, WWF had good, or WWE, I guess I should say, just to make it uniform.
right,
Had good stuff too during that, like Steamboat, and like eventually I saw some of the early WrestleManias, like 3, and things like that, and they had Steamboat and Flair. So they had some good matches. But at the same time, it's like I don't know. I didn't like when I was younger. I didn't really care that it was a great, you know what I mean, more than caring about the, just the outcome more than anything.
yeah. We never sat there, and I had many. My mother and father. They'd invite my dad's cousin because he was a big wrestling fan. My uncle was a wrestling fan. He used to go to the Garden all the time. And he'd see Bruno San Martino. So we'd have family parties. My mother, she'd make the sauce, and she'd have a whole thing, for the WrestleManias. And but the point being is we never sat there. Oh, this was a good match. This was not such a good match. The work rate was
Yeah, it's like now after every match we cast our ballots online.
right, right. And it's different, you're a columnist, so this is, partially what you do. You know what I mean? This is partially what you
Yeah, it's
do.
part of the just comes with the gig.
Yeah, yeah, and
I mean,
and you
some people
still,
say I don't do star ratings, and that's fine too. But you know,
yeah,
um, I think it's a nice way to slot. You know what I mean? Slot the matches and where they may fit and so forth, and
yeah.
give people an idea of exactly how good something is.
Well, I don't think you're giving Beefcake versus Genius more than a quarter star. Are you even giving that a star? I don't know.
I didn't rate these, to be honest.
Well, I'll tell you what, neither did Wade. I mean, well, no, Wade graded them in the newsletter. He didn't star rate them, he graded them. And let me tell you, it was not very generous. And when Wade is not too generous, or he's saying bad things, it's bad because Wade tries to be positive, so when he's saying it, it's not good.
Yeah.
But all right, so let's roll into it, Sean. We'll get started here just to give a couple of stats on the show. So this took place on January 21st of 1990. So we're just about near the 35-year anniversary of it. It's in the Orlando Arena, which eventually becomes the TD Waterhouse Center and finally the Amway Center. The building is a year old at this point. So another case where WWE gets in with a young building. I think they did the same thing at SummerSlam '94 with the United Center and other. As a matter of fact, this is just popping in my head. And John Mazzara, to give him a shout, he'll appreciate this. The Chase Arena, the home of the Warriors. I think like the minute the building opened, WWE hosted a Raw there like 5 years ago. So they like to be the first. This, of
Yeah,
course,
they just got into for Netflix.
Yeah,
The Clippers new
the
arena,
Intuit, the Intuit Arena. Yeah, yeah.
which is amazing.
I actually tried to. I bid for the trip. I didn't get it. Somebody senior got it, but there was an LAX layover. There was only one layover
Oh,
offered in
jeez.
our schedule, but somebody got it. And then
That would
stuff
have been
came. Yeah, I
that.
wanted to go. I wanted to go.
Well, hopefully it'll line up for you again.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to go to Revolution. And then usually I go to Double or Nothing. Usually I'm able to get Vegas for Double or Nothing. So we'll see how that works out. Okay, so this was the home of the Orlando Magic. It also hosted the 1994 WCW Bash at the Beach. Speaking of Hulk Hogan, I reviewed that show last year with Kylan Furlow, so check that out. And also Armageddon 2003. According to Wikipedia, 16,000 in the building. Your announcers, Tony Schiavone, WWF Tony Schiavone, folks, along with Jesse the Body Ventura. Your interviewers are Mean Gene Okerlund and Sean Mooney. And of course, Howard Finkel is your ring announcer. Your dark match. This is a real, actually, you know what? I love this dark match. Even though I didn't see it, Paul Roma defeats the Brooklyn Brawler. I don't want to hear any hate for Paul Roma. I don't want to hear any hate for Power and Glory, okay? And we were not too far away from Power and Glory forming. So, yeah, you talk about two guys that, and it's funny because like this is the time that they were trying to prop up Lombardi a little bit, Steve Lombardi, that is the Brooklyn Brawler. So, but kind of ironic to see a Brooklyn resident be a Yankee fan, because like, God rest my father's soul, you were not allowed to be a Yankee fan in Brooklyn in his time because that was Dodger territory. So, yeah,
That's right. Yeah.
All right. What's that?
Yankee fans are all over the place, and you wonder.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
got them around here. People born here, Yankees fans.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a mix. Like you get some Connecticut people. Like my wife has a bunch of family in Connecticut, but they're Yankee fans. And but you know what? Actually, that's not a good example because most of them grew up in Queens, so that's not a good. That's
Oh
not
yeah,
good.
but they are in Connecticut too.
Yeah, I mean it's
Run into people that in Connecticut that are Patriots and Yankee fans. I'm like, what?
yeah, that I don't understand. That I don't understand. That's a weird mix. Yeah. That's all. All right. You get your opening, you get Jesse dressed in a Mickey shirt and ears and says that Mickey and Goofy were turned away. I love that line. He offers Tony a Goofy hat, but very smugly he says, I'll wear it later. Is it me or is Tony just like a little smug? Am I looking?
He looked a little ticked off.
He looked a little ticked off, right? He just and Jesse too. Like I got the sense they just did not want to work together that day.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know for sure, but he definitely. I mean, he's pretty explosive on social media, so
Oh yeah,
he's
oh
probably
yeah,
got a hot button.
oh yeah. He blocked me for some reason. I never even
Oh,
interacted with
he
him.
blocked everybody. He blocked me. I never even talked to him. And he unblocked everybody eventually.
Weird, weird. I think he
He's
just blocks. You know what it is? I think he just blocks analysts, like anybody that
yeah, he
does like
blocked
maybe.
any. Went out of his way to do it, which is same thing. Shawn Michaels blocked everybody too.
Me too.
Yeah,
Unbelievable.
uh,
All
you're
right.
not alone.
Yeah, yeah.
But
It's
yeah, a small world of Chris Charlton. Got some people mad last week with his New Japan commentary, and Tony took to Twitter and
yeah. I heard about that.
blasted him and then deleted it. I said, man, talk about bringing a cannon to a knife fight.
I know. And then
Thinking,
for those not familiar with that, I didn't see the show, but I heard about it. Chris Charlton called Tony Khan a money mark. during the Omega Kid match and said some things that they were misusing guys in AEW. Is that about right?
Well, he was basically telling the story of what Kid had built up in interviews. I
Okay.
don't think Kid used the exact term "money mark,"
Okay.
but Kid had basically said, "I don't want to go to a place where they misuse guys like Okada and I
Got
don't know
it.
how Osprey's name got thrown in there, but he did,
Got it.
and Jay White and names like that." He said, "I'd be on TV twice and I'd end up in catering," and so I thought Chris was trying to sell the story, except Chris got like sounded really happy to be, you know what I mean, in
Yeah.
like a very
Yeah.
enthusiastic way. So, um, yeah, he kind of I thought it was kind of ridiculous, but I also understand, the perspective of New Japan and wanting to satisfy their partners, and um, New Japan made the decision to suspend him, and he made other comments too. I think Rocky Romero compared the Continental Classic to the G1, and
Got it.
Chris, I think that might have been. I don't know if that was the straw, but if there was a straw, it was.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it was a ridiculous thing to say. After 2 years of the Continental Classic, and you know how many G1s are we heading towards? 35 this year.
Yeah.
But yeah. Anyways, it was a big to do, and it's just kind of funny that lo and behold, Tony Schiavone. You know, I don't think he could have possibly been that offended by those comments. Because they fell in line with what Gabe Kidd said, and you know what I mean. And it
Yeah.
was clear he
Yeah.
was trying to tell the story. I get the money mark comment would probably upset Tony. I would think.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so I get that, but New Japan had to step in and do something to show their partners that, you know what I mean. Just,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. They got to work with AEW, so they don't want
but
Yeah.
yeah, Tony. Just there's no need. Like, I mean, right after it happened, there's a picture of Chris with Kenny Omega smiling together. Kenny's a EVP in that company, and he's clearly not upset. And maybe
Gotcha.
he was unaware because obviously he hadn't heard the English commentary, but I would think he'd get clued. If he'd get clued in pretty quick.
Yeah.
But
By the way, we have a
yeah,
cat visit. He's decided to jump on the counter, and he is behind the computer, and he's behind my iPad, which has my notes. So yes, we have Biscuit. He has joined the chat. All right, let's get to this opening beauty of a match. So we got the Bushwhackers, Luke and Butch, against the fabulous Rougeau brothers, Jacques and Raymond Jacques and Raymond, I should say, with Jimmy Hart. So this was actually a long-standing feud. It went back to Mania 5, which saw the Bushwhackers win. Then they beat them on an edition of Saturday Night's Main Event, and then they were opposite each other at Survivor Series. So a real barn burner of a feud. What was odd though was that the Bushwhackers were actually working Nikolai Volkov and Boris Zukov on the house circuit. So for those of you clamoring to see that. This goes about 13 and a half minutes. The winners are the Bushwhackers. So they hit the battering ram on Raymond, who was knocked into Jacques. Raymond had the Boston Crab on Butch, and they tried to double team him, but that got stopped, and that's what led to the finish. Wade's rating on this was a D-, not too generous. And if I could pull up his comment in the newsletter, if you give me a second here.
I just saw your cat's whiskers go.
Yeah, they're both here now. The first match was pointless. If a tag team match was going to be the opener, why not get the crowd going with the Rockers? That's what he had to say. What did you think of this beauty, Sean?
It wasn't good, but I thought the crowd liked the Bushwhackers. I mean, it
Yeah.
wasn't. I retroactively chastising Wade 30. I mean, I'm not that much higher than him, but I would say like a C minus maybe, or I don't know. It wasn't very. I guess a D plus is accurate, but I
Oh,
mean,
we
it
give it
was.
a D minus.
Yeah, I'd give it a D plus at least. Be a little
Yeah.
higher. It was like I said to you, it did capture the crowd when the
It's
Bushwhackers
serving
were in
their
control.
audience. It's serving their audience at the time.
Yeah. Yeah, so the crowd liked the Bushwhackers and their whole shtick and everything. So I mean, they were happy with it. It was extremely basic, paint by the numbers presentation.
Yeah. And it's, you know what? It's an opening match. The crowd, by the way, well, actually we'll come to that in a second. It's an opening match, so the Bushwhackers are crowd pleasers, you know.
Yeah.
So's Penny Alavatka at a party, but you know, whatever. Um, and it works. I mean, you know, I got a kick out of Jesse calling them the marching morons.
That was funny. I think he said, "Oh no, I'm thinking of the geniuses line." He called. We'll get to that later, but yeah, he
Yeah.
called what's his name, Double Dumb Beefcake.
Double dub. Yes, double dub beat. That's right. That's right. That's right. Of course, Jesse's Jesse's giving Tony crap. He says, "How come you don't have a ticket, Tony?" And he's like, "Well, I wanted to be here and work with you." Like, it's so stupid. Like, because I'm the lead commentator. That's what you know. But just whatever. You know, they're having a little fun with it.
Jesse, Jesse really danced with the too much in truth. Some we'll get to it.
Yeah, yeah.
I noted a couple things he said.
I'm waiting to hear that. I am looking because that's one of my weaknesses on these shows is I miss a lot of the commentary. So I count on my co-host to fill that in. So I'm sure you've got the ones that we need. He does say though he is serious at one point. If it's kept to wrestling, the Rougeaus have the advantage, and then he's right. You know, I mean,
Yeah,
if we're looking at it from a realistic standpoint. But you get a lot of the comedy, you get a lot of the biting. I mean, Butch, I got a kick out of this. He bites Raymond on the ass, and then he bites Danny Davis. Yes, he's like, how is that not a disqualification? But he's right. He's right. Oh my God. Of course, they're doing the arm waving thing at one point. The Rougeaus do get a little bit of a heat segment. And one thing I noted too in this, the referee is Danny Davis. And
yeah,
they are long past the crooked referee gimmick, you know, from a couple of years prior.
yeah.
And it's funny because there was at one point the Rougeaus were double teaming Luke, and he was tied up on the other side. And I think it was Jesse who said, "Referee Danny Davis doesn't see a thing." And it's like, were they trying to tease him still being the crooked referee? Were they trying to like, you know what I mean? Give you a little bit of that, but not actually go through with it, just to remind you, hey, this was a crooked referee.
Even if they weren't, Jesse probably would have said it just to make himself smile at the very least.
Yeah, yeah. Because I was always because I think he got reinstated like a year prior or something. I know he works. I know he works Mania 3, and I even think he works
I
Mania.
doubt they were trying to go back to it because they had.
No, not go back to it, but like just give you little hints of it. You know, give you a
Yeah,
little like, don't remember this guy. You know, just kind of tease it a little bit. Um, at one point, did you notice where the Bushwhackers are about to wishbone Jimmy Hart? But like they're standing there and the Rougeaus are on the outside. I felt like the Bushwhackers were like, come on, guys, you're coming. Like, you know what I mean?
yeah.
So, but yeah, that's the opener. I don't have a lot more to say about it. As it turns out, Raymond retires not too long after this, and we don't see Jacques for a year until he comes back as the Mountie.
Sometimes you just got to get away.
What I wanted to ask you real quick about the Rougeau brothers, they're kind of one of those acts that got the fresh coat of paint. You know, we see a lot of acts get that. You know, they come in and they're pretty good, but they're not really over. And then they get Jimmy Hart. They do the switch with the Hart Foundation, where I think the story was, oh yeah, the Rougeaus get 25% of the Hart Foundation's earnings and things like that. Jimmy screwing the Hart Foundation, and I mean, they had them move to Memphis. They made them like all Americans, but they were very sarcastic about it. And I don't know, like to me, it just still didn't work. How do you think the whole turn with the Rougeaus worked, and just their work overall in the WWF for those 4 years?
I didn't really think it worked at all, except like being cheesy heels,
Yeah.
like very basic entry level.
Hmm.
And I mean, it just by the time they got to this match, you could just see they're kind of just going through the motions to get through the match, pretty much. And,
Yeah. It kind of reminds me now of like who's paired with Leo Rush? Is that Action
uh,
Andretti? I can't
I
keep
think
track.
so. I mean, you're going into the deep.
But it's that same idea. It's like, let's turn him heel, because if we turn him heel, now they're going to do mean things and say mean things, and that'll get them over. And it's like, no, if
Yeah,
um,
they're
yeah.
very bland. That's the one.
And what's funny? Jacques actually has some personality. Like he's got personality as the Mountie.
Yeah.
And then the Quebecers. I think the Quebecers are an underappreciated team from the late
Oh
night.
yeah, they're way better than the fabulous Rougeaus.
Yeah, yeah. So it was Raymond, Sean. It was Raymond that brought it down. Um, all right, so we move on. Gene Okerlund talks to Ted DiBiase and Virgil, God rest his soul, and God rest Gene's soul. He had drew number 30 last year, and this year he gets number 1. DiBiase is pissed, but he says he will win the Rumble. I made a note of this. In my head, I was waiting for him to say, I'm going to WrestleMania and I will be the WWF champion.
How about Mean Gene just grabbing the number from him? Give me that, like his father.
Right, right.
DiBiase had his number. He's like hidden. He didn't want to show it. Give that to me. And he just allows Mean Gene to take it. He like chastises him like a child.
I wonder how many Gene had before this show. He was Gene was good for a couple of cold
Yeah,
ones now and then. you know.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, listen, DiBiase, like you mentioned earlier, one of those guys, just got you charged up. He was memorable, and we're still making everybody's got a price jokes today. As what do you want? Stop playing with my water bottle, will you? I'm letting you sit up here. Jeez. For those my cat Biscuit, who makes a lot of appearances, of course, now he knocks my notebook over, is up on the counter where I'm doing this podcast. So all right, let's get to a real 5-star classic here, Sean. Brutus the Barber Beefcake against the Genius, Lanny Poffo. So this was after the Genius had beaten Hulk Hogan on Saturday night's main event via countout with the help of Mr. Perfect. Basically, they were setting up Beefcake to face Perfect at WrestleMania 6. And what I found crazy, I was digging into the history of WWE.com, just to give them a shout. Perfect was actually beating Hogan on the house circuit, and I mean a lot. Like he was beating him via DQ, and Genius was winning matches over Jim Neidhart via countout and DQ. So real crazy what was going on behind the scenes. I'm going to let you paint the picture of what happens. This is a double disqualification that goes over 11 minutes. I'll let you paint the picture on this one because this is just bizarre. Let's see if we can make sense out of this one.
Well, as I said before, the Genius read his poem at the beginning. He called Briefcake Double Dumb. So um, we had some of the interesting fan action or reaction early with the Beefcake going for the eye rakes and the fans loving it. Um, Genius rolled to the floor. We had some stalling too.
At the
An-
cartwheels.
Another, yes, the heel stables, but eventually Beefcake got his sleeper, and Genius got out of it, and he ended up accidentally whipping him into the ref.
Right.
So Beefcake teased he was going to cut all his hair off with the, he choked him out with the sleeper after that. And began giving him a new haircut, and out comes Mr. Perfect. And the ref calls for the bell, and I figure, oh, it's going to be, a DQ on the genius. But no, it's a double. The ref was so confident that he remembered that, just back then these guys had their PhDs in reffing. He remembered that, um, you know, he remembered that Beefcake had whipped the genius into him, and it was clearly an accident. But he held
Yeah.
up the letter of the law, called a double DQ. So Genius helped Mister Perfect attack Beefcake, and Perfect attacked him with the chair, and that was that, a double DQ.
And it's so funny because, like, all right, so if the referee had made the decision to end the match when Beefcake shoves the genius into him, right? Well, then that's the disqualification. Why the double?
Right.
Why the double? Like technically it should have been the genius winning via disqualification. And what's funny is, given the story, right? If they were building to Beefcake versus Mr. Perfect at WrestleMania and they had just had the genius win on Saturday night's main event, why not have the genius win here as well via DQ?
Right.
Because you want to build the heat and you want to put the heat on the genius. You don't want the genius win. I mean, I got the sense they didn't want genius winning matches like via pinfall unless it was a jobber, right? But they also didn't want him losing either. So it was like, that's why you would get a lot of countouts and you get a lot of DQs. The only pinfalls he scored were over, name your jobber from the, late 80s, early 90s. But yeah, no, it made no sense. Especially given what they were doing. And I don't think let me see here. I should have looked this up. Saturday night's main event. They did another one. I think they did. They did Hogan and Warrior. I know they were heating that up in advance of Mania. Let me look it up here real quick.
All right.
Okay, so here's 1990. Oh yeah, and by the way, this is bizarre how they do. No. So they actually no, there isn't there is a Saturday night's main event after this event, but the ironic thing is it's recorded before this event.
Yeah.
But they recorded Saturday night's main event on January 3rd of 1990, but they air it January 27th. So they already had, and I think Hogan and Warrior had they won the match, but they, disagreed and they had a confrontation or whatever. They actually beat Mr. Perfect and the Genius.
Right.
So, I guess that's to get Hogan his win back, brother. Boy. And double count out, disqualification. Yeah, that sounds about Saturday night's main event. Yeah, you pretty much laid it out. One question I wanted to ask you before we move to the next match. Beefcake was positioned, we're jumping ahead a little bit. He was positioned to face Perfect at SummerSlam to win, or I don't know if it was to win the IC title, but he has the unfortunate accident. I mean, it's a really bad accident. They supposedly had to keep his mouth open so he could breathe. It was bad.
Yeah.
Do you think Beefcake, let's say that doesn't happen and he gets the match with Perfect, should Beefcake have had a short IC title run? I go back and forth.
I mean, probably just because it was such a long program.
Yeah.
A long build to it. I mean,
I kind of compared it to LA Knight a little bit, because LA Knight was so over, but it is a gimmick, and Beefcake was a gimmick. They were into the strutting and the cut, you know what I mean? And
I could see him. I mean, I could see it either way. I guess.
Like maybe a short, because I mean, Kerry Von Erich actually gets it, and he only gets a short run. So I'm thinking if Beefcake is healthy, I don't think it hurts to give him like a 2-3 month run.
No, he was over too at the time, and I mean, I could see it. I mean, it's not like a crazy thing, you know, that it could give him a little run with the title.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah, I don't know, you know, because they I know he had his shot at Mania 4, but they were not gonna, you know, he wasn't beating Honky. Um, and then I do kind of remember like, because I was a fan of Beefcake at the time. I do kind of remember like, yeah, gee, it'd be nice for him to get a quick, you know, at least get a quick run or something, you
Yeah,
know. Um,
he was kind of on that edge of, you know, someone that maybe could get a run, but you know, kind of on the lower end of the over faces.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, well, turns out it wasn't to be. And geez, he doesn't wrestle until 93. So
Yeah,
but he does get the win over Perfect at WrestleMania 6. So, you know,
which is
I
a
would
pretty good win.
what's that?
That's a good win on the undercard.
Yeah, yeah, no, it was a good match. It was a good match that I remember. All right, we get Sean Mooney talking to Rick Rude, Bobby Heenan, Haku, and Andre the Giant. Boy, God rest a lot of souls here, except for Haku and Sean Mooney. Heenan says they have everything planned out. But then when Mooney asks Rude if it comes down to he and Haku, they start to argue. So, you know, I didn't read much into this. It's basically, you know, a stable having a disagreement. You know what I mean? With an every
I
man
thought
for
they wanted us to think that they wouldn't get along in the mat, you know.
yeah, yeah,
I just think it's funny that the announcers causing the dissension. Like they hadn't, none of them had thought of this until Sean Mooney said something, and they all start arguing.
yeah, right, exactly. It's like, oh, what?
It's
Yeah,
funny, like the heels, like they're like, you know, they hadn't thought of it. That like they know what each other. You know, they almost got this look like they all know they're bastards.
yeah, yeah. You know,
And
and it's funny,
Heenan kind of gets them reined in.
right, right. And you know, it's funny. Like back then, I don't even think we cared, but like we would probably notice that now. You know, in one of these interview segments. But all right, this
The
next match.
announcers were quite powerful back then. I mean, the backstage, like Mean Gene ripping the number out and Sean Mooney stirring the pot.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's like, it's you know, it's not too much later that Rock's calling Kevin Kelly a hermaphrodite and stuff.
God. Oh God, those two. Yeah, I see him. You know, it's fun. I see him posting a lot. He actually posted that he actually had some interest in coming to the WWF. Kevin Kelly. Um, I don't think that'll ever happen though.
Yeah,
Yeah, that ship has sailed. All right, this next match, boy oh boy,
that's a
submission
whole
match.
other podcast.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we get Greg the Hammer Valentine against rugged Ronnie Garvin in a submission match. So this goes back to April of 80. A lot of long-term feuds being paid off here, or being set up anyway, where Valentine had beaten Garvin in a retirement match. Garvin would then be a referee. He would fight with the wrestlers that wouldn't listen to him. He went so far as to punch Greg Valentine during a match against Jimmy Snuka. At SummerSlam, Valentine pinned Hercules but had his foot on the ropes, and Garvin, acting as a ring announcer, announced Hercules as the winner. They went at it. Later on, Valentine insisted that Garvin be reinstated, and he was. Valentine was on the King's Court at Survivor Series, teaming with Randy Savage, Earthquake, and Dino Bravo. And Garvin was with the 4x4s with Jim Duggan, Bret Hart, and Hercules. It's a real Rhodes scholar list there. They worked a lot in the house circuit, and I'll give a shout to my friend Kyle Ross over at Squared Circle Gazette. They actually had a really good match at Madison Square Garden in the fall of '89 than they did here. So if anybody's anxious to seek that out. In January alone, Valentine was 6-1-1 against Garvin on the house circuit, according to history of WWE.com. This goes a little under 17 minutes. Garvin wins it with what eventually becomes the Scorpion Deathlock or the Sharpshooter. Shivani had called it a reverse figure four. So both of them, and we were texting about this yesterday, both of them are wearing these shin guards. Garvin called his the Hammer Jammer, and Greg Valentine called his the Heartbreaker. Well, eventually they're both removed, and Garvin is hitting Valentine with the Heartbreaker. What do you call it? Valentine submits, and then Jesse, I got a kick out of this. Valentine didn't submit. He just said no, meaning like he wasn't submitting. He doesn't give up. So yeah. Jesse chiming in. Wade had this at a D+, and his quote here, Garvin Valentine was a decent physical match, but the same old stuff cannot continue to be exciting. Those were his words. What are Sean Radican's words about Valentine versus Garvin?
Under my notes, I have just, this was bad with an exclamation point.
And why was it bad, Sean? Was it the 10 attempts?
Well, yeah, they were early on. They're trying to, throughout the match, they're trying to pin each other, and I'm like, this is completely stupid. The fact they're allowed to enter the match with the weaponry on their legs, and that their weaponry perfectly countered their, Garvin's. It looked like shin guards they were wearing that the baseball players wear these days to protect themselves when they're at bat. Those. So like Garvin had his on, and Valentine had his on the back of his calf, lower leg.
Yeah.
So they perfectly blocked, they perfectly matched up when the figure four was applied. So
right.
I think one time he had the figure four and he tried to turn it into a pinning combination. I'm like, oh my God.
Yes.
I'm like, this is so dumb. It made my head hurt. It was like really, really bad. And I know like another part we were talking about when we were texting each other was like, why are they allowed to use these? It is a submission match, so you can't have DQs. But I was like, I've seen a lot of submission matches, and they just know better. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I know it was no DQ, but I just, you shouldn't have to think so much about, like, why were they allowed? Well, if it's a submission match, why are they wearing this stuff,
Yeah.
They should have been, like, checked before the match. And, of course, they ring the bell, and both guys have, like, you're looking at them, and they both got stuff on their leg,
Yeah.
You're like, what's going on here? It's just...
it takes you out of the match. It takes you out of the match. And Garvin and Valentine should be a good match. These are two good wrestlers. It should be a good match.
Yeah, like, why are they trying, like, you just wonder why they're trying to go for pins throughout the match. And, like, I think the announcers tried to cover, like, the one out of the figure four. They said he did it to escape the figure four. And I'm like, well, why would he let go if he could just lay there and hold the pin? I mean, if he can hold the pin, it doesn't matter. He can just keep holding the submission.
Yeah.
The announcers did their best to cover, but this was...
yeah, you could tell they were in damage control. You could tell they were in damage control throughout the match. It was just, it was so... I don't know what...
I'm sure. I mean, if anything would cause Vince to pop a gasket, I would love to see if there's anything on the Observer or something this week. Should look it up after we get off the air. See if Dave had anything. Because this is
I'm sure Dave was pretty cheeky about this. I'm sure he was.
This was just... I mean, what did Wade give it a D? I mean, that's generous. This
Yeah,
is
I
as
mean,
terrible as it can get. Well, I
the-
mean, I've seen worse, but this is pretty terrible.
yeah, I mean, the work was fine. The work was fine, but the problem is with
Yeah,
the,
I mean, you could tell when they actually allowed. There was like a very brief sequence where they were really physical with each other, and that was good.
yeah,
But the story, I mean, just that these stupid WWE stories, it was just atrocious.
yeah, yeah. No, I don't think. I think I've heard a review on this, and I think Dave was pretty critical of it, but we can confirm that once we go off air. Um, but yeah, we I think we pretty much covered it. We get some brawling. We got a lot of chops back and forth. You talked about that. There's a little bit of a slugfest. There's a Garvin headbutt. I always, knowing what we know about CTE, the headbutts always kind of make me cringe a little bit. And there was like a weird overhead camera angle showing the Garvin headbutts.
Yeah. Even the match I was watching yesterday, that Tomohiro Ishii versus Gabe Kidd in New Japan, and they were in California last weekend.
Yeah,
They had multiple headbutts. It took, it was a great match, but man, that the fact that they still do these headbutts is just insane to me.
yeah, yeah. That's uncomfortable. Um, and then there was one comment. I was like, her. During chops by Garvin, Jesse goes, "This is the most rugged match I've ever seen." I'm just like, really, Jesse? Come on. Because it's rugged Ronnie Garvin.
Yeah.
Come on. Um, so yeah. And then Jimmy Hart actually removes the hammer jammer off of Ronnie Garvin. That's when Valentine starts working the leg. And then eventually we get the finish. Garvin was actually supposed to feud with Rick Martel after this, and they did on the house circuit, but they never aired a match on TV, and he was gone by the end of the year. So I don't know. Who knows what happened behind the scenes there? Anything else we need to talk about with this match before we move forward, Sean?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. And then
Can put this to bed. That one can go to bed.
yeah. And then we go back to Gene Okerlund. He's talking to Mr. Perfect. And Gene berates. You talk about announcers having power. Gene berates Perfect for getting involved in the match.
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty that was pretty cool. And he says, "This is what you happen. This is what happens when you mess with friends of his." And then he goes on to say he drew the perfect number, and that's number 30. Wade was actually really high on this interview.
It wasn't bad. He said he's tired of Beefcake interfering, so that's why he got, you know what I mean, getting people's business.
Yeah.
It was a pretty good segment. Not nothing
Perfect.
great compared to the rest of the show. You could give this an Oscar.
Perfect was actually positioned to win this, and it got squashed for Hulk Hogan. Um, without digging into, because that's a separate podcast, without digging into all the machinations of why. I mean, we all know who won it, so we can, put two and two together. But could you have seen a world where Perfect wins it? Like, I think not, because that's just not how Vince closed shows. Like, Vince did not close shows, especially pay-per-views, with a heel winning a big match. Like,
No,
I
I
mean,
just can't see it.
you'd have to have. There's not even another match you can close the show out with, unless you had, unless Hogan wrestled like a world title match or something. You know,
Yeah.
um, I mean, what could he have done? Him against DiBiase. You know what I mean? Like, because
Right.
he was feuding mostly with Savage and Zeus towards the end of '89. So it's not like there was a hot challenge. I mean, unless it would have been Mr. Perfect, or the Genius. Like, there you go. You could have had the Genius, and then you know, and then Hogan could have closed out the pay-per-view and have Perfect win the Rumble.
I
But
don't,
also,
I don't know. I
but
mean, it's just, it's weird that, like, I don't know. I still think it's weird to see the champion in the match sometimes.
I know. Yeah.
But the easiest thing to do would just have Warrior win it and then challenge Hogan at WrestleMania.
That's okay. Well, we'll hold that point till later because I want to revisit. I want to visit
But
that.
I'm just saying, it's just we can hold that till later.
Yeah. All right. You mentioned the brother love segment earlier with Queen Sherry and Sapphire. So I just kind of took overall notes on this. Um, Sherry said it's great to be this. I got a kick out of. It's great to be in front of a man who radiates masculinity and love. And I'm like, masculinity, Bruce Pritchard. What? Oh, Sherry.
His
Sherry.
face while she said that was great too. He's like smiling.
I bet you something else popped up when she said that. But hey, um, and then they talk about Sapphire being overweight, and before they bring her out, and
Well,
then
they set up Sherry as like the definition of class,
yep.
and then they just ran down Saf. Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt, but
No. You're hitting it, and then this is great. Sherry asks Sapphire, "Where do you get your clothes?" So she doesn't get them from the same place.
she. I mean, this was just so over the top bullying type. You know what I mean? Just calling her overweight, calling Dusty overweight. I
Yep.
think they said they had to get a forklift to put Dusty in the back of a semi for her to drive him around or something,
Yep.
or her.
I think no,
Uh,
actually, I think they said Dusty has to put her on a forklift.
yeah, Dusty has to put her on a
Yeah.
forklift, and she said that it was borderline a little racist almost to say she should curtsy to her. So there's like that element there.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, this was uncomfortable. I mean, this is 1990, and it's like the something you could see used for an anti-bullying PSA.
Well, no little secret. In 1990, I didn't like this either. This does not fall under for me. This does not fall under. It was it was one thing back then. I didn't like it back then either. I mean,
I mean,
I get what they were doing. Go ahead.
I didn't know any. Like, I just I knew they were being mean to you know what I mean, to Sapphire.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, this is to set up the mixed tag at WrestleMania where it's Dusty and Sapphire against Sherry and Savage. But yeah,
Yeah,
um,
eventually, Sapphire after the forklift line that set up, Sapphire finally hits the big slap, and they have the Macho Man come out, and then Dusty comes out, and they have the refs separate them, and he also did she slap Macho Man too?
I
I think.
let's see. No, I don't think so. No, Savage comes out, then Dusty comes out. They go at it. Sapphire actually
Oh,
jumps
she
on
slapped
Savage.
Brother Love. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Well, Sapphire jumps on Savage, and then
Yeah.
Brother Love pulls her off. And it's like it's funny watching that part of it made me remember that they recapped it at WrestleMania 6. And I remember Tony going, "Look at Sapphire, look at Brother Love." And like I remember that. Like that was you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like that was in the back of my head.
So after getting bullied, they celebrated by dancing. Rhodes and Sapphire. They play the music, Dusty's polka dot theme, and they boogie on down.
Yeah. Has Dusty ever talked about the polka dot stuff?
I'm pretty sure he did.
Did he talk about, hating it? Did he talk about just, doing what I got to do, brother? Like,
I'm trying to remember exactly what he said. I don't want to misquote anything. I can't.
yeah.
I mean, he knew what it was. I think he just did it, just to. collect his check. I think he was getting a pretty good check for doing it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Not. I mean, exciting at the time. Exciting for the.
It's Cody's talked about it, so it definitely probably was something. He
Yeah,
resented.
yeah. I gotta dig into that and see. Is it just you know, it was the McMahons and the Rhodes back then, and you
Well,
know,
yeah, I mean, it was meant to shame him, so I'm sure he hate it. You know what I mean?
well,
Sure, you know how prideful Dusty was, and when he had any power, he was as bad as any. You know what I mean in terms of using that power for his own good.
I bet you looked at it like, all right, you know what? This is what you want me to do. I'm gonna kill it and
Yeah,
whatever. You know,
but at the same time, you don't forget that either.
right, right. All right. Next match, Hacksaw Jim Duggan against the Big Boss Man with Slick. So we're just about at the tail end of Boss Man's heel run. Really not a lot going on between these two. It's kind of a random match. I'm assuming just kind of a palate cleanser before the Rumble.
Yeah,
Um, Duggan was still feuding with Randy Savage on the houses, and believe it or not, Dusty was working with Big Boss Man a lot. I don't recall that feud being on TV, but he was working Boss Man at the houses. Um, this goes about 10 and a half minutes. Duggan wins this via DQ. So Danny Davis, the referee, DQs Boss Man after seeing him hit Duggan with the nightstick. So the sequence is Slick holds Duggan on the ropes, but Duggan gets out of the way. And then the ref gets tied up with Slick while Boss Man grabs the nightstick. He gets a shot in, but then when Danny turns around, he does it in time to see the Boss Man using it. Duggan then hits Boss Man and Slick with a 2x4. Uh, Boss Man throws chairs in the ring, and then Duggan swats at it like he's hitting baseballs.
he almost killed him with one of the chairs, like those old heavy chairs.
Yeah, yeah, those weren't exactly. Those weren't like, light, gimmick chairs, I don't think. Um, Wade graded this a D. Quote, Boss Man took some really awesome bumps for a big man, but the match was not good enough to keep interest. I'm not gonna lie, I actually didn't mind this match. I really didn't. I thought it was better than a D. I mean, it wasn't pretty and it wasn't, a classic or anything like that, but I thought it was fine. You brought up Duggan being kind of a brawler earlier on, and I don't know, I thought he worked nicely with the Boss Man.
Yeah, I thought it was. I thought they also. I'm sure at the time, if we had been watching this weekly, it would probably have warned us the DQ, the finish, and everything. And if we were regular watchers waiting for, you know what I mean,
Yeah,
looking at this now. But yeah, I thought they worked relatively hard, to keep a pace to the match. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
there's an intensity and an intentionality to what they did. Um, One of the things, yeah, they built it as the 2x4 versus the nightstick coming in, so you kind of knew maybe that's where it was going anyway. Where
yeah,
Boss Man would get his nightstick from Slick, but then the ref would catch them or him. Um, Again, it's weird to see the ref be so aware of his situation. You know,
yeah.
um, these refs, they had their PhDs, and like I said, in the '90s, these were refs out at the, they'd gone to get the doctorate in refing.
Yeah, yeah.
These are not, duh, that.
Well, like at one point, like Slick is choking Duggan, and Danny Davis is tied up with the Boss Man. So it's like at one spot they're not so smart, but then he's smart enough later to turn around and see the
At like exact right time.
yeah, the exact right time. And again, Danny Davis, that little tease of is he going to be crooked? Um,
And
yeah,
one of the lines Ventura had was great, because I think they were trying to drive on commentary that where Shivani was that um, about him, he shouldn't have his nightstick, and Ventura goes, then why should Duggan be allowed to have his 2x4? And
Yeah,
Shivani said that was part of his, that was basically part of his gimmick or whatever he said, and and, and Ventura goes, You ever seen a have you ever seen a cop without his nightstick?"
I forgot
So
about that line.
I was like, Jesse's really killing him.
Yeah, at that point, Tony, just give up. Just give up.
Yeah, yeah. I said this is a TKO right there with that.
Just give up, Tony. Just give it
Yeah,
up.
he's like, yeah, Duncan's got the 2x4. You're like, yeah, no one carries a 2x4 with them. But it's like, you ever seen a cop without his nightstick?
Yeah,
It's like checkmate.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. I felt like there was a lot of that going on, like even in the Rumble too. When guys were
I've
double.
got another one written down somewhere. That was one I wrote down.
Yeah. Um. All right. Yeah. Hacksaw Jim Duggan, Brutus Beefcake, Hulk Hogan, buddies. Sure protected on this show, right?
Yep.
All right, let's get to the Rumble. I'll just run down real quick. They interviewed a bunch of guys.
Yeah, the Captain Zano hour, all these guys screaming.
Yeah, yeah,
They're like, here we go. And they had all these pre-tapes. I said, I'm watching it. Like, they're all screaming their promos. I'm like, oh my god, this is so 80. Even though it's 1990, I said this is so 80s WWE. I said this is just like,
Did it feel like I was listening to a podcast? It's that Squared Circle Gazette. I get nothing for mentioning them. I just want to hat tip them that they were starting to become the WWF that is at the time like a caricature of itself, and I feel like if you go through, like 90 to 92,
what,
you do kind of see that. Like a lot of the promos are tongue in cheek and they're yelling a lot, like you said.
uh,
Reading too much into it, or a little bit of truth to that?
I don't know, I think it's just the style. You got these guys all gassed up. It's
Yeah.
just like yelling. It's like
I mean,
it's like it's what some people still think is wrestling to this day, just from when they're exposed. If you talk to older people, like, oh, it's those men that yell.
yeah.
I
I
mean,
mean,
it is just ridiculous. Like this, to see, like, 15 people with the same cadence, all screaming at you.
yeah.
It's just so it almost even if it isn't even if it's not on purpose, it's definitely becoming a parody of itself, just because I think the roster seemed kind of to be a little bit diminished in this era a little bit
It
early.
was becoming a bit diminished.
It didn't seem like they're like it's like a pretty big drop off after Hogan and Warrior. It felt like at the time, at this time, and
Which is crazy though, Sean, if you think about it, because I mean, you still got Jake Roberts, you still got Randy Savage, you still got DiBiase, you still got Dusty
right.
Rhodes,
But yeah, but like all those guys had just been defined as below Hogan anyway. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And the only one that really had a shot was that hadn't been brother it was Warrior. You know.
right, right, yeah, and I mean,
And
we're not.
even like in this, I mean, we'll get to it, but he looked like a boof in this this Rumble match.
Yeah. And by the way, speaking of looking jet, what the hell was Rick Martel doing at the time? That dude looked jacked.
Oh, and he's like one of the few that didn't yell. He's like, "When you smell my fragrances," it's like,
I still want my arrogance atomizer, whatever they call it. I still want mine. I gotta, maybe
did
get
they
one
ever
of those.
make those for?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
See, imagine little kids carting that around, like squirting each other.
I know a few kids at school. I'd like to do that too. I'll tell you that much. Let's see. You know what? eBay. Let's look it
I
up.
mean,
Let's see.
I know this fell off a cliff because I mean, I stopped watching for a few years because it came so uncool. Like a few,
Yeah.
like around '92 or something. If you watched you were like a big time loser in school.
You got Papa Shangoed, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
All right.
I mean,
Nothing on.
it's like it just like I remember it got so bad. Like once I hit like sixth, seventh grade, like I mean, I didn't like it. I was like, this is so cheesy. I can't do this anymore.
Yeah. No. It got pretty bad.
I mean, I came back like '98. I probably took like 4 years off from like part of '92 to '96. I checked back in, but then I didn't have cable, so I had to like wait till my dad had cable at the time. So when I visited him, I just happened to come across the segment where the Outsiders Nash, lawn darted Mysterio into the truck on the NWO was taking over, and we were on a break, and I was like, I was like, oh my god, this is
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
so
That's
like it was cool again because like again the kids at school were starting like some of them were starting to talk about it again. Stone Cold and the NWO.
yeah.
It was really the NWO first. I
Real
saw
quick.
that. I
I'll tell
saw
you this.
that. I was like, oh my god! I was like, I gotta try to watch this when I can.
So I was in my new job at the time in '96, and there was a manager, my direct report. He had been out, but like a couple of months into when I started working there, he came back. There was something going on. Anyway, we get to talking, and I find out he's a big wrestling fan. Oh, me too. Blah blah blah. We start talking. I get a phone call at work on a Sunday, right? He's like, Frank, it's Chad. I'm like, hey, what's up? He's like, dude, you'll never believe who turned heel tonight. I'm like, who? He's like, take a guess. And I'm like, don't tell me Hogan. He's like, yeah. I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? Like, like that was just something that, you would not expect. He had been such a baby face for so long. Although now looking back at some of this old stuff, Hogan's really a heel, but that's another podcast for another day.
Yeah, it was shocking. Like I didn't even hear that part. Like I said, all I
Yeah.
saw was like Nash and like I was like, oh my god, these guys are maybe it was '94. I checked out for a little while. I'm trying to.
Well, it was to the point. It was to the point. My friend Bill, we started talking about wrestling again because he heard about it, and then my uncle, who kind of checked out for a while, he starts talking to me about it. So I think that's about the time that everybody really, started to kind of check back in.
Like
Everybody that got Shangoed out got Hogan in.
I really came back into it like in '98 because I was able to like go to my friends' houses. It's like more people had cable then,
Yeah, yeah,
so I was like one of my friends from my graduation got King of the Ring '98, and when Mankind got thrown off the Hell in the Cell.
yeah,
It's funny that it's like we're about 6 years away from such a radical change, like from what it is on this show to. I mean, 6 years is a long time in wrestling, but still, it's a big shift.
yeah. Well, 6 years ago, from this date, 6 years ago, AEW was just born. So crazy how how time flies. All right.
I can't believe it. It's been
Yeah,
6 years for them too. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. All right, let's get into the Royal Rumble itself. So this is the third televised edition of this match. Let's not forget there was a house show edition before the '88 Rumble. Your first two winners were Hacksaw Jim Duggan and Big John Studd. We are still in the era of no reward for winning this match. It's just, basically to put someone over. So this goes just about an hour, and your winner is Hulk Hogan. As we talked about, he eliminated.
Surprise, surprise!
Yeah,
Like that
yeah,
song.
We'll get into that because that's really the talking point. So I'll just kind of run through some batches of people. It's Ted DiBiase and Coco Beware, your first two. Coco gets eliminated pretty quickly, and then it's Marty Jannetty. He gets eliminated pretty quickly, and then we get Jake Roberts, and we start to fill up. We get Jake Roberts, we get Randy Savage, we get
Piper.
We get Roddy Piper. We get the Warlord. We get Bret Hart. And then we get Bad News Brown at number 9. So basically no eliminations until Jake the Snake. He's about to DDT DiBiase, who's avoiding it like the plague. And Savage throws him out. So in that little sequence there, you're basically setting up Jake and DiBiase for WrestleMania. So that's kind of what's going on in that first little group. Anything that you noted in that little run there?
The
DiBiase thing is really the talking point. And before
how long he lasted. Like,
yeah, he I forgot to note the time. I'll look it up.
They didn't even note it. They just noted. I think they said like he's lasted 23 entrants.
Yeah.
They didn't even mention that they didn't have their stopwatches back then.
No, they didn't. But that's why we have the internet and Wikipedia, because it can tell us all these things. DiBiase goes just about 45 minutes. So,
and he is like drenched in sweat too. He was working hard.
Yeah. Now, the only little tweak I might have made, I might have dragged out like him eliminating everybody. Like, I know, like this was kind of a mini version of what they eventually did with Brock Lesnar in 2020. Not that I'm comparing DiBiase to Brock Lesnar, but DiBiase being number 1 is a big talking point in this Rumble, given he was number 30 the previous year.
Right.
The only little tweak I might have made, like I might have sent like, and I know you need cannon fodder later in the match, but maybe like I would have sent Superfly. It's not like he does anything. I mean, the only thing he does is eliminates Hakeem, which I thought was strange. And I don't want to do that to Tito. Oh, yeah, the red freaking rooster. I mean,
did you get to the Andre the Giant part yet?
No, we're not. We're almost there. We're
okay.
almost there. But that's the only tweak. I might have dragged out the DiBiase thing, just kind of cleaning house a little bit longer. Do you think that would have worked? Do you think what they did worked just fine?
I would have liked a little more of him eliminating people, because he was in there so long, but he wasn't doing a whole heck of a lot after.
Yeah.
Right.
It wasn't like him being in the match was really accomplished.
Yeah, I mean, they do it. They've done it with a bunch of guys, like, and it's more impactful where they're in there, and every so often they toss someone out to remind you, like, hey, this guy's been it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's more cosmetic than anything else. There's one, and maybe this is the point that you had down. Shivani questions Savage saving DiBiase from being eliminated, and wonders if Savage was paid off.
Mine's towards the end.
Okay.
I just found it, so I'll save it for the end of the match.
Okay.
But that's a good one too.
We then get Dusty Rhodes. Him and Savage go right at it, and Savage gets eliminated pretty quickly. He backdrops him over the top. By the way, Savage looked like he was wearing some surfer gimmick. I'm like, right? It looked like he was wearing like, something different earlier on, and like this was just weird.
I was surprised how easy he went, but
yeah. I mean, Savage, you would think, you would. Well, you know what? I don't think they wanted Savage going too long, because I don't think you wanted to cross him with Hulk Hogan. Like, I think you wanted him out before, but you could have had him go longer.
Or made his elimination, like at least have a couple people toss him out.
Yeah, this is not a good period for Randy. I mean, Randy only goes 10 minutes in this match. I mean, Haku goes 22 minutes. Snuka goes 17. Yeah.
I feel like they
Winning
wasted the primes of so many of these guys. Like they could have been so much bigger than they were if it weren't for all the Hogan on top and
the politics. Well,
the politics.
I,
Because
I I think they wanted. See, they didn't want you thinking of anything but Hogan and Warrior for this. Like they designed
yeah, I
this.
get it. I'm just saying in the grand scheme of things,
Oh yeah,
like Roddy Piper was so good. I would
yeah,
have liked to see him bigger than he was. Like he still looks really young in this match when he comes out, and I'm like, man, this like he was like one of my favorites, but he never really, not never, but it seemed like he's on the back burner more often than not in
yeah.
terms of creative giving him attention.
Right, right. Yeah, Piper gets 12 minutes in this, and he
Yeah,
actually so at least like they set up WrestleMania. So well, just to do this in order here. So Andre comes out at number 11, and he just basically he just basically freaking drags Warlord over the top. I thought that was
yeah,
great. And of course, as a wise ass, I got to be a wise ass. I texted my friends. I go, paging Dr. Zahorian with the Warlord. Um, Piper and Andre actually go at it. That was a nice little 1980s treat there. And then the Red freaking Rooster comes out at number 12. I had to look up like had he done the baby face turn. It was like a year earlier, so I was like, okay. Uh Red Rooster. My God.
talk
Um
about another gimmick with
oh,
intentions to punish and shame.
my God. Oh. Anyway, Piper
Can you imagine like Vince like the polka dots and the red? It's so stupid.
Sean, sometimes I wonder how I stayed watching this company all these years with all of like knowing all of that. Like I could just
Yeah.
see him. I could just see him plotting it out. I could just see him, you
It's
know?
gonna cluck like a bird.
Yeah, that's such good shit. God, so funny, you know. He really is. He, you know what it is? He really is like the king and he designates somebody. You know how the king always has a court jester?
Yeah,
Like that's somebody's always his jester.
like Joffrey in Game of Thrones had the imp.
Yeah, I didn't watch Game of Thrones, but I believe you.
All right.
I believe you. All right, getting back to the match here. Piper
See, now
eliminates.
you got an assignment.
Yeah, yeah. Piper eliminates Bad News Brown, then Brown pulls out Piper. That sets up their WrestleMania match. So at least we're getting some stuff for WrestleMania set up. I do like that. I do like that. You know,
Right.
when these matches accomplish something. So that is cool. And then Andre eliminates the Red Rooster real quick. So goodbye.
I mean,
We
the
then get
part of this match that I didn't get was like Demolition eliminates Andre eventually
yeah.
with the double shoulder tackle. And and like how do you get that? But then at the same time, like five guys a short time later have to team up to eliminate Earthquake.
Yeah. That
It's
comes
not a huge deal, but it's like I can't see like WWE pushing someone big now and allowing like a tag team to eliminate them. You know?
let me take it a step further. Why was Andre even in this match? I mean, the guy was clearly just about done with his career. I mean,
Yeah.
the guy should not have been there. I mean, there was a reason he was teaming with Haku, you know? Um, all right, so Demolition Axe. He goes right at it with Andre. Andre and Haku. Well, this is Andre and Haku. They were actually the tag team champions at the time. Andre and Haku had
Which they
beaten.
make no mention of.
Yeah, they don't. I did my research there, folks. Haku comes out number 14, goes at it with Dusty, and I made sure to make note of this. Um, we had just watched SmackDown, Cody and Haku going at, or Cody and Tama Tonga going at it. So I'm like,
Uh,
my note here was 4-year-old Cody hanging out with 7-year-old Tama Tonga or 6-year-old Tonga Loa at the time,
uh,
Of course, Haku being the father or the adopted father of Tama Tonga and Tonga Loa. We then get Demolition Smash. So they come out 2 numbers apart as opposed to being 1 and 2 the previous year. Then we get Akeem. 8 men in the match at this point. Akeem and Andre are going at it. So you're getting the 2 big guys, but then Andre's eliminated by Demolition, like you said. And while that happens, Bret Hart gets eliminated, but it's not on camera. And I could not
yeah,
figure.
that was surprising. But I guess not for that time. Uh,
Yeah,
that
Bret
time
was,
period, I guess, he wasn't a huge, he was just a tag guy. But
and it's funny because they had split them up, right? They had split them up for Survivor Series, but then they put them back together. So they were considering a singles run for Bret.
pulled
But
the plug on it.
yeah, they pulled the plug. So all right. We then get Jimmy Snuka, who like eliminates Akeem with like a half axe handle and a half crossbody. I thought that was a little weird.
Yeah, that looked odd.
Dino Bravo comes in. He gets tied up with Dusty. And then we get not the Earthquake, Sean, the Canadian Earthquake.
Oh, that's right. He had the maple leaf flag on his chest.
And he eliminates Dusty, who I thought took a really he just I think he bumps into him and then he just takes a real generous dive over the top. And then out goes Demolition Axe, and then we get Jim Neidhart. So I've gone through a bunch here. Anything you have in your notes you want to discuss up to this point?
Nothing. I brought up the Andre elimination and the Snuka eliminated Hakeem. Got a big pop.
Yeah.
Um, One thing I noticed was that Earthquake's legs were completely shaved, and I was like, I never noticed that growing up. So I just had a bad mental image of like who shaved his legs because he. I can't imagine he could get as high as they were shaved, given the trunks.
Oh God. I
Maybe
love it.
Tugboat helped him.
Oh God. Yeah, where's Fred Ottman? Maybe Freddie
They
or
appeared to be shaved and oiled and very white.
God. Now I'm gonna think about John Tenta's
I'm sorry, folks, but that's they
Pro
were holding
Wrestling
him.
Minute now.
They were
Pro
holding him
Wrestling
in the
Minute now.
corner.
X-rated.
They were holding him in the corner, spread eagled, and he was like, glowing at the legs.
Oh God.
When they
Pause. Mark for edit. Oh Lord. You know how old Tenta was here, by the way? 20 freaking 7 years old.
27.
Yeah.
I was gonna say 39. I guess.
27 freaking years old, John Tenta. Yeah.
He looked. He did not look like he was 27.
He looked old. Let's see here. Jim Neidhart. I noted that he came in well after Bret Hart was eliminated, so they didn't want those two going at it. Earthquake. Earthquake gets eliminated by just about everybody, and then things start to heat up. We get the Ultimate Warrior at number 21. He eliminates Dino Bravo. They had been feuding. There's a little bit of a short brawl before that happens. Your only heels in the ring at this point are Haku and DiBiase, and then we get Rick Martel. Haku actually eliminates Smash at this point. We get Tito Santana, who goes right at it with Rick Martel, and still got DiBiase. And then they argue. I don't know if this is your point. Virgil getting involved because Virgil was on the outside.
No, it's more. It's about the. It's kind of plays into the finish.
Got it. Got it. Honky Tonk Man number 24. Him and Warrior go at it. Neidhart is eliminated by the Warrior and a few others. And then DiBiase. And it's funny, they had just mentioned how long DiBiase was in the ring. And I hadn't seen this Rumble in a while. And I'm like, DiBiase's gone. And lo and behold, Warrior eliminates him.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, about the only thing in this little sequence here was basically Santana and Martel going at it, still kind of they feuded for a while after WrestleMania 5, right?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, yeah. I think
They went at it like they had just started the feud.
yeah, that's yeah.
You wouldn't know it. Like the announcers did a poor how like when you watch New Japan, like I know WWE is a totally different animal, but like when you watch New Japan, like the announcers lay out all the history so you know what's going on.
Yeah.
Like WWE's like the opposite. Like you need your doctorate in WWE storytelling,
I know. I
because
know.
otherwise you're like, wow, Santana's going after him. This feud must have just started. And you're like, no, it was a year ago.
Yeah, WrestleMania.
These
It's
guys are the
crazy.
tag champions. Oh, you know.
I know. All right, we get Hulk Hogan at number 25, who eliminates Snuka. Thought that was an odd elimination. He eliminates his buddy Haku. He then eliminates Tito Santana while he's trying to eliminate Rick Martel. Shawn Michaels comes in. Hogan eliminates Honky. Warrior eliminates Martel, and I think Warrior quickly eliminates Shawn Michaels. I think this was the time, it's always hard to remember, like the Rockers, they were always in trouble at some point. They get like no love in this match at all. Like Jannetty's in there for like a minute or two, and Michaels is barely in there for a minute.
Yeah, he was like, I was shocked. Like, I knew. I mean, I know he was a tag guy, but man,
They got like nothing. Like,
yeah,
I don't blame Wade for saying, you know what, put them in the match with the Rougeos and let the freaking Bushwhackers, because they're good for, they were good for this spot.
Well,
All right.
do you remember what year it was when the bushwhacker guy came down marching? And he marched for the Rumble, and he marches into the ring, and he gets clotheslined right out, and he marches right to the back.
I think that was 89. I just reviewed that with Kelly.
I was hoping that was this one, but it wasn't.
Yeah,
I hadn't seen
so
that in a long time. I was like, when I first saw it, I thought it was so funny.
what? No, it wasn't that one. Let me see 91. Give me a second here. Bushwhacker. Yeah, Bushwhacker. That was in 91. It was Earthquake that eliminates him. He
That
comes
was
in.
pretty great.
Yeah, he comes in. He gets the. He moves his arms or whatever, gets eliminated, then he just walks right back. He's like, I don't give a shit. you know?
I mean, there's not much going on in this match, but the only thing you really notice is that the big reactions that Warrior and Hogan get.
And that's where we are right now. And honestly, I think that's why they designed the match the way they did it, because you don't really remember anything in this Rumble other than that confrontation.
Right.
So I'm sure everybody listening to the show remembers it, but they face off. Hogan kind of like points at him. Warrior is like pumping his arms. They go face to face. There's a couple of shoves. Hogan comes off the ropes, goes into Warrior. He doesn't move. Warrior does the same. Hogan doesn't move. They crisscross and they do a double clothesline and they're down. Was that enough? Do you think they needed more? I feel like it
Not
was
back
just,
then. I mean, go ahead though.
no, I feel like it was just right, just to set
Yeah.
up what they were setting up for Mania.
Yeah, just a taste.
We then get the Barbarian come out, and then Rick Rude, who oddly comes out like before the clock.
Yeah, I forgot to write that down, but some the announcers had to do some Fred Astaire type. Why
Yeah,
did he come out? And they're like, oh, he just came out. He just
yeah, it just came out, no problem.
yeah, he came out and the 10 had just barely come on this corner of the screen, not counting it down, and I think one of them, maybe it's Ventura, went, what are they going to do? Send him back to make him go
Right,
again? He's in there. They might as well let it go.
right, because it's every man for himself, and no D. If Michael Cole was on the mic, well, it's no DQ, and it's every man for himself. There's really nothing stopping him. So.
Then you got to think about why everyone doesn't just run in there.
Exactly. Um, so Warrior at this point saves Hogan, and then goes at it with Rude. Hogan and Barbarian go at it, and they were trying to throw out the Warrior. That's Barbarian and Rude, and Hogan ends up eliminating the Warrior, who then comes in and attacks Barbarian and Rude. And Jesse has a few comments about that.
Yeah, it's just Warrior saves Hogan from an elimination, and then Hogan ends up eliminating the Warrior, and you know Ventura kind of goes, "Why? Well, why did Warrior help him?" And Hogan, I don't think he was supposed to.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Because that would make Hogan kind of an AH.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're
And it
right.
was, Warrior went the story made no sense because I thought the story was going to be they wanted another piece of each other, so they were going to save each other. You know what I mean? From getting eliminated until the end, because otherwise, why is Warrior saving? You know what I mean? It just made no sense. Even then, it's kind of convoluted. It's just.
It's complicated. So you know what? Let's pause that point. We'll come back to it. We'll get through the match here. So Hercules is number 29. Then it's Mr. Perfect. And I don't know about you, but when Perfect is going at it with Hogan, he's got a scowl on his face. It's like, you asshole. I was supposed to win this, but whatever.
Yeah.
Right? It wasn't just me, right? You noticed that too? He's just got the scowl. And he's just like, I felt like he was shooting on Hogan there. Hercules eliminates the Barbarian. So your final four is Hogan, Rick Rude, Hercules, and Mr. Perfect. It's a done deal at that point. You know who's winning. Rude eliminates Hercules. Hercules eliminates Rude, and it's weird. Perfect is like holding down the ropes after taking a bump, and then he's trying to get up, and then Rude takes this really generous bump.
Yeah.
Perfect then hits the perfect plex, and Hogan hulks up, because Hogan's got to no-sell the finisher. And Jesse goes, I don't believe this. And I'm listening to that. I'm like, is Jesse really annoyed seeing Hogan hulk up? Like, really? I got to see this shit again. It's not even like a pinfall match. It's a freaking Rumble.
Yeah.
And then Hogan,
not this crap again.
Exactly. I felt like there was a little bit of that. And then Hogan eliminates Perfect. So we'll come back to our discussion about Hogan and Warrior, but anything I feel like after the Hogan Warrior confrontation and Warrior's gone, it's pretty much a done deal.
Yeah, it felt like you knew it was going to win after, Warrior gets eliminated. He just runs to the back, and you're like, oh, what the heck? You know what I mean? It just, I think he came in the ring and, like you said, he went after them for a bit and then just left. It's very weird how he left, but, once they left Hogan alone, it was obvious, what was going to happen.
Yeah. So back to this thing about Hogan eliminating Warrior, I don't know, that, and this is me thinking about it on the spot. Could that have portended a Hogan heel turn? I mean, they were never going to do it in 1990, but forget about the circumstances. Let's just fantasy book. Could you have made the case to have done that, and then Warrior beats a heel Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania 6?
Yeah, they never do it, so it's like,
Yeah.
I never put thought into it. Yeah, I mean, sure, they could have done that. But I don't even think it would cross their mind to do anything other than a face versus face match.
Yeah.
That's why the whole thing is like stupid to me. That Hogan does a heelish thing there, like a heelish act in the context of like what Warrior did for him, you know,
Yeah.
and Ventura calls attention to it, and then it's just nothing, you know.
No, it's swept under the rug. It's like,
Yeah,
it's Terry must pose. So,
I mean, it
um,
doesn't. I don't think it played any mention into the feud going forward or anything. Oh, don't you know the Warriors are angry at your betrayal.
yeah, I don't think they thought about it. And honestly, I didn't even think about it until watching this Rumble and talking to you about it. It actually makes it even make less sense now.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't even remember it until we're rewatching.
It basically seems like they just, because I don't think Vince ever thinks about those things. Like, I'll give Levesque credit. Levesque would probably clean that up. Levesque would probably clean that up. And he would note that, Hogan is going to look bad eliminating the Warrior after the Warrior saves him, you know, so he would probably clean that up. But I don't think they thought about. I think it was just Hogan's winning, so let's get the Warrior out because we don't want it to come down to. But okay,
Right.
let's ask the question. Let's ask the question: should it have come down to Hogan and Warrior as the final two? And then, I mean, if you still want Hogan to eliminate the Warrior, fine. But because the Warrior is the final person in the Rumble, he gets the title shot. You could tell that story. Would that have been a cleaner way to
Yeah,
do
I
that?
just don't like the loser getting the title. You know what I mean?
Right, right. And they would do that a number of times in the 2000s. I mean, I'll tell you what comes to mind right away. Royal Rumble 2007, right? Undertaker wins the Rumble. He gets the shot against Batista. The runner-up, Shawn Michaels, gets John Cena.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you're a final two in
Well,
the
by then they had multiple titles. So.
yeah, yeah. So
I mean, ideally, what they do is have Warrior win, and Hogan's not even in the match.
thank you.
But that means that Hogan doesn't have a big moment at the end of a big show, so because he's going to have his brother time, you know.
I mean, I'll credit my friend Justin. He talks about this, and it's a fair point. By Hogan winning the Rumble and Warrior beating him clean at WrestleMania, it makes the Warrior that more impressive, And I think there's some fairness to that. But like logistically, I like what you said. And I've said what you've said for years. This was the Warriors Rumble to win, and he could go on and challenge. He can go,
Hogan doesn't need to like. I guess the idea is it's a prestigious match to win, but it's
right.
like they could have just left him off the show altogether.
Leave him off the show, or right now, hindsight being
But
2020.
then you would disappoint all those people, so that's not something you could really do.
You know what? That crowd would have been fine had the Warrior won. Here's what you could do. Okay. So Hogan feuds with Earthquake after WrestleMania. Why not have Earthquake eliminate Hogan? Right. You could still, I mean, if you still have Warrior win, you can have Warrior challenge Hogan, and then
Right.
you revisit Hogan Earthquake after Wrestle. Like have somebody, or even have Perfect. You know,
There was a better way to do it than they did. I think,
yeah.
there's a couple avenues. I mean, you just came up with a good one too.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, they just basically plowed. They had their vision. They wanted Hogan to win. This is how we're doing it, and it'll be fine. Nobody, and it kind of, it's funny though. It plays into one of the reasons I don't think the Warriors title run goes as well as it does, because it never feels like there's a commitment to the Warrior.
Yeah.
Like you watch this, Hogan wins. Warrior wins the title at WrestleMania 6. The big visual is Hogan leaving the ring, you know? And a lot of the focus throughout 1990 is on Hulk Hogan. Warrior, the champ, really doesn't. I mean, he gets a feud with Rick Rude, but that was already done. You know, he really doesn't get a good feud until later in the year when he feuds with Savage. So I ask you, is this kind of a sign that, yeah, we want to go with the Warrior, but we're really not that committed, and maybe that's why it didn't work out the way they had hoped?
I think it's part that, and like part just how weak the roster is.
Yeah.
That's my, I mean, how
I
many?
mean,
I mean, Warrior's whole gimmick is that he blows through people. So how many? You know what I mean? He can, and he's facing wrestlers that most people expect him to beat, and he's
yeah,
already beaten the. And Hogan, he had already beaten the one guy that you had some doubt about. So it's a matter of, what can you do with this guy, because he should beat, realistically he should beat everybody he faces, and he's already beaten Hogan.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's interesting to explore. Was listening to some podcasts about 1990, and it's just, I think the general consensus is they put the title on Warrior. It didn't work out, so they went back to Hogan, and I think that's mostly true. But I do think you have to put some context to it. And yeah, I mean, some of the opponents. I mean, I think Warrior's first title defense was like Haku. Like,
Yeah, I was just like, oh.
I mean, Rick Rude. I mean, that Rude's not beating him. And then at the end of the year, he denies Randy Savage, which starts that feud. And I understand that was to put the heat on it, but why is the champion denying a challenge? Like kind of
Yeah.
a little weak. Um, all right, so that is your Royal. I think we hit all the points. We talked about Perfect potentially winning. We agree that that was not going to happen. We fantasy booked Warrior. Any other points you want to bring up before we close it out, Sean?
No, I hit everything I had down.
Okay. In honor of Pat McNeil, like Wade does, thumbs up, thumbs down, or thumbs in the middle?
Thumbs down.
Yeah, it's tough. It's
Not as
tough.
bad as some of the older stuff I've watched, but I did they came out with like a SummerSlam cooler set many years. Maybe it's even been like 10 years now. I don't know how long it's been, but like back when they were doing the DVD releases, they had a. Do you remember this? They had a mini cooler with the first 20, I think,
Okay.
and I had tried to watch them all, in order, and
Okay.
I got stuck, after like two or three, just or three or four, because they were so bad.
This was SummerSlam, you said?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Starting with the first one and
Yeah.
working my way up. I've
Yeah.
tried to watch, some of the, like I tried to watch WrestleMania 3 many years ago, and it was just like brutally terrible to get through. um,
Wow. See, I enjoyed
some of
WrestleMania
it,
3. Yeah.
I guess to me being the work weight queen that I am.
Yeah. Well, that's why you're watching. I mean, you're watching New Japan now. You're watching. Well, you were watching Ring of Honor. I guess you still are.
Yeah.
Kind of AEW. So you're covering different things. Anyway, well, since we're on that topic, let's go ahead. You're a long time You're a columnist here since what? 03, right? Do I have the year right?
Oh, two.
Oh wow.
Well, I
Okay.
was a recap. I've been with the site since. Oh no, you're right. It was '03. I'm sorry. I was a subscriber since '02.
Gotcha. Gotcha. You
Um,
started out with SmackDown, if I'm not
yeah,
mistaken.
in '03, June of '03, I started out with the SmackDown.
Oof. Not the time to recap SmackDown, brother.
Well, it wasn't that bad for the first. Heyman was the booker,
Yeah.
so it
Yeah.
wasn't that bad until they Vince decided to pull the plug on him, and then it was awful.
Yeah, I was following SmackDown, I think, up until that time. And about '03 is when I just basically watched Raw. And even at that point, I was kind of fast forwarding. I wasn't as invested, for a while.
I mean, I was.
Really?
Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no, no. Go ahead.
I
This
was
is
gonna say, like, I was so invested for I was watching before I was writing. I was watching everything. Um, the even WCW down to the last dying days. Me and my friend were splitting the pay per views and watching them. You know,
yeah, yeah,
we just loved wrestling. um,
yeah, yeah,
the TNA pay. I used to watch the TNA. $10 pay per views weekly when
yeah,
when they launched. And yeah, when I ran into that SmackDown, it got so bad about 5 months in that I switched over to Ring of Honor.
yeah,
Can you imagine asking out of a WWE writing? Because
yeah,
I had written Wade, multiple times. Can I volunteer? Because I was so into it, like just reading all when I was reading all the websites and you know in college and especially in college and uh, just really being into it with my friends and stuff. When I
yeah,
came across the torch wanting to do something and someone finally dropped out and I got the SmackDown's a pretty good for your first volunteer gig, that's pretty darn good.
yeah, for sure.
And I
Yeah.
coming from someone that watched WCW, like even when the wheels fell off, I was praying for them to run another. Oh, I hope they run one more pay per view.
And it's funny not to open up. I do have to get going here, but at the end of WCW 2001, I don't think it was all that bad that year because they basically went back to the basics like those last few
Yeah,
months.
they kept like rebooting so much. It was like kind of just washed over
Yeah.
you.
But I'm talking about like January through when they closed out. Like it wasn't that bad. It wasn't that
No, it wasn't
terrible.
awful.
Well, but you know what? You know what? They basically went back to '80s wrestling, and look, it was over at that point. But at least they were trying at that point.
Right.
At least they were trying. But like, yeah, the end of '99, basically when Russo came in through 2000, it was unwatchable. Like I checked out. I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so nowadays, Sean, you're pretty much what's your focus nowadays?
Jeez, I do. I watch everything, believe it or
Yeah.
not, for the most part.
But I think you're
I
more
mean,
zeroed in on like New Japan,
my
AEW.
specialty is New Japan and
Yeah,
AEW. Really zeroed in on New Japan primarily. That's my specialty now that the Ring of Honor we knew was gone. It used to be Ring of Honor and New Japan and the Indies and the
yeah,
um. I just the Indies. I haven't done it. It feels like the Indies have kind of you know. I'm sure there's good Indies out there still, but it's nothing like it was when you'd see guys develop it, like just to be quick to see guys careers, what I mean, you can see their career arc on the indies and they oh, this guy's doing well here and then he goes and works this indie, a bigger indie and a bigger indie,
right.
and hey, he's got a dark match in Ring of Honor, or you don't get those career arcs anymore on the indies, so
Yeah,
it's you see guys pretty much go right into AEW,
yeah,
or you see him go right from the New Japan dojo to Young Lion, or to the young, So it's primarily New Japan these days, but you'll see. Don't be surprised if I get a call to host the SmackDown post show, or last minute if Wade needs a fill in or a co-host or you know, stuff like that. I
yeah,
do watch everything pretty much these days. AEW, WWE related. NXT is a little hard for me to keep up with, just because there's only so many days in the I want to watch NXT more, but it's
Yeah,
for my own sanity. It's the wrestling's on so much. You can only between the premium live events and
yeah.
I probably will cover the upcoming GCW show though at Hammerstein this coming weekend.
Oh, there you go. Okay. All
That
right.
looks good. I'm sure
There you
people want to hear about that. But yeah, mostly New Japan. You can check out. I've tried to relaunch my New Japan Central with all the. I'm still updating it, but I've keeping the. They announced a whole bunch of dates I have to update. Their major dates for the year. Through August or early September the other day, so I can update that in the New Japan Central. That just basically tells you all the upcoming cards and lineups and things like that. How folks can watch. I keep a list of the current champions, so it's a nice little guide if you're wondering what's going on in New Japan. I'm going to try to keep that current this year. Um, so that's basically I have a weekly takes. I didn't do one last week because there's like all those New Japan. There's three New Japan pay-per-views in the span of 6 days, I think.
Yeah,
And there were four major shows in the span of a week, so it was pretty crazy. But
gotcha.
but
And what's where's your socials, Sean? Plug your social media.
I'm not on X as much anymore, but I am on there. It's at _torch on the Twitter, but on Blue Sky, I'm at Sean Radican. I'm trying to move over there and see how things are over there. But I kept my Twitter account because still could get some people, some reach out there too, even though it's pretty throttled these days.
Gotcha. Yeah. And you could follow me on X at Frank Peteani. That's at Frank Peteani. Facebook and Instagram as well. I'm also on Blue Sky. I don't use it as much. I really haven't posted much lately, but I will get back to you if you message me. It's at Frank Peteani 73 over there at Blue Sky. So feel free to reach out to me. Just doing this right now for the Torch. I'm trying to fit some of the post shows back into my life if I could do them every now and then. So we'll see. But Sean, this has been a pleasure. Really enjoyed working with you today, and we will do it again down the line sometime, my friend.
Sounds good. Thank you.
My pleasure. And for Sean Radican, I am Torch contributor Frank Peteani, reminding you when you are looking for nostalgia, you have come to the right place where we talk pro wrestling